Next up for Migration 2020 is Jim Viola, the President and CEO of HAI.
Hello, I'm Jim Viola, and I'm the President and CEO of Helicopter Association International, or HAI. I want to thank Redbird for allowing me to speak here today. I'm a firm believer in flight simulators and aviation training devices, especially with helicopter training. I'd much rather correct a mistake on the ground than in the air, and simulators offer you the ability to practice maneuvers that would be too dangerous in actual flight, too risky for both you and the aircraft. You can also get instant feedback on your performance in a simulator and more quickly repeat maneuvers, procedures that you need work on, and other training activities. The technology today makes simulator training more realistic and more effective while being less expensive than traditional in-aircraft training. As to why I'm speaking to you today, please sit back, buckle in, and get ready to hear why I think everyone that's watching this should be promoting helicopter flight. Now, before you mute my presentation, you should know that I love flying all kinds of aircraft. I flew MH-47 Chinooks and UH-60 Blackhawks in the Army, and I have flight experience in more than 70 aircraft, both helicopters and airplanes. After I left the Army, I worked for the FAA before joining HAI. I still fly as much as I can, both fixed-wing and helicopters. Most of us know that airline work is questionable right now. The future is a bit murky for all airline travel. Having adapted to remote work and Zoom calls, businesses may be hard-pressed to justify flying around the country for meetings. Leisure travel will eventually rebound, but that's going to take some time, as forecasted. From my perspective, it looks like there is going to be a glut of airline pilots, and as a result of the pandemic, a shortage of airline jobs. But you know what's been flying during the pandemic? Helicopters. HAI did a survey through the University of North Dakota several years ago that documented the need for helicopter pilots. According to the study, the next few years will see a lot of helicopter pilots retiring. Our friends at Boeing also did a study, and they estimated a worldwide shortage of 59,000 helicopter pilots in the next 18 years. What does that mean for flight schools and students considering pilot careers? Well, there will be more empty seats that need filling in helicopter cockpits. And when you consider those helicopter pilots typically reach the highest pay and seniority tiers quicker than pilots with the airlines, the arrows resoundingly point to helicopter lessons. Flight schools should build out their rotorcraft instruction programs and provide opportunities for their helicopter students to build high-quality helicopter flight hours. So we know there's a shortage of helicopter pilots, and we know that means career opportunities and access to higher pay. But wait, I have even more reasons why students should choose helicopters. It's their path to the future of aviation. The future of flight is centered around advanced air mobility, air taxis, flying cars, Uber Elevate, and rotorcraft industry is perfectly posed to catch the next wave in the evolution of flight. Maybe now you're interested in adding or increasing helicopter flight training at your flight school, but how do you attract students? At HAI, we've worked with a few flight schools to develop partnerships with high schools and offer programs that give students the exposure to aviation that will get them interested in flying or aircraft maintenance careers. We're happy to share this information that you can use as a template to develop your own relationship with your school in your area. Send me an email at president@rotor.org and I'll put you in contact with the right HAI staff member to help you. Introducing aviation to more students has the additional benefit of making those career paths known to a more diverse population. Traditionally, we haven't done the best job of attracting women and minorities to our industry. Now is a great time to change that, and we'll become a better, stronger industry by including new people and new ideas. Let's discuss another reason why helicopters are a great choice for flight students. Do you remember why you wanted to learn to fly? The feeling of lifting off and flying through the skies. Well, growing up, I always wanted to be a pilot. Flying looked like it could be the coolest thing ever. Taking the controls and making the earth fall away beneath you is not something most people can do. When you start flying fixed-wing aircraft, you still get to fly the plane. You are still operating the controls, watching the instruments, doing your scans. Unfortunately, for professional airline pilots, as you build up your hours and advance in your career, you end up doing less actual flying. The airplane nearly flies itself from point A to point B, and the pilots almost become passengers. Do you know what helicopter pilots do? They fly missions. Pilots never really stop flying a helicopter. Despite the technology and the controls available in the newer aircraft, the controls are more complicated, for one. Secondly, helicopter pilots are often doing more than just flying from airport to airport. They are often using the aircraft as a tool to get the job done, a job that sometimes cannot be done any other way. This means that as a helicopter pilot, you're flying lower to the ground in a more congested airspace. You're making your way to the scene of an unfortunate accident where people need urgent medical care, and you're bringing it to them. You're landing off-site, on a road, or in a field without a runway. Crews load the patient into your air ambulance, and you are quickly and safely delivering these patients to the hospital. Helicopters are the Swiss Army knives of aviation. Depending on what tool is attached, you can perform over 50 different kinds of missions. Equip it with a stretcher and medical equipment, and you'll carry the sick and injured to the hospital. Put a Bambi bucket on, and you can fight fires, as I'm sure you have all seen the recent heroism out west. Put a hoist on, and you can conduct search and rescue missions where you'll hoist hurricane survivors up into the aircraft. Helicopters will take you and your family on a tour of Hawaii or provide unparalleled views of the Grand Canyon. They might even take you to an incredible fly fishing location on a remote river in Alaska. Law enforcement agencies use helicopters to keep us safe. Military helicopter crews defend our freedoms during times of war and conflict. And these same crews serve the public during times following natural disasters. And then there are the less well-known projects. We use helicopters to clear brush and trees along railroads and power lines. Helicopters can carry harbor pilots to ships when rough seas prevent boats from delivering them. Helicopters can deliver new power line towers, string the wires between them, and carry repair crews to the tops of those towers to fix them when they stop working. Hospitals use helicopters to carry organs for transplants, skipping past all the traffic below them. Helicopters help to harvest Christmas trees. Farmers use them to spray fertilizers, pollinate crops, and prevent those crops from freezing or rotting. Helicopters are used to set HVAC systems onto large buildings where cranes can't reach. Helicopters even carry works of art from one location to another. Just one helicopter, properly equipped, can do so many things: search and rescue, air ambulance, law enforcement, firefighting, and like airplanes, when needed, they can carry passengers from point A to point B if it's got a 3,200-foot runway. Why do helicopters have this diverse set of missions? It's because they have some special abilities that set them apart from fixed-wing aircraft. 1. Helicopters, unlike airplanes, can land virtually anywhere. They don't need a runway, and their design allows pilots to land them in confined areas like among buildings. Helicopters can land on roads. They can land in fields. They can land in schoolyards to introduce STEM lessons or aviation to students. And then they can lift off and go somewhere else. Second, helicopters can hover, holding a fixed position in the air. This means they can stay in one position over a rescue scene or a load they are delivering to a confined area. And by the way, did you know that a helicopter with no engine power can still safely land? It's called an autorotation, and it's a maneuver that every pilot practices with the engines disengaged or powered off. By adjusting the pitch of the rotors, the pilot uses the flow of air coming up through the rotor blades to control the descent. Flaring the aircraft at the right moment allows for a safe landing. Try that in an airplane. Helicopter pilots are also used to flying at low altitudes, which is vital as we move into the early stages of advanced air mobility. The low-level urban airspace has been used by helicopters for years, and we know firsthand its challenges. I've already described to you the broad scope of missions that helicopters fly. That is equaled by the number of rotorcraft types available to conduct these missions. Many government or firefighting agencies recognize 3 or 4 sizes of helicopters, assigning specific tasks for each one in accordance with their capabilities. Type 3 helicopters are the smaller aircraft. They are used for observation, movement of supplies and personnel, and light firefighting activities. Type 2 helicopters are the medium-sized aircraft. They can move crews and teams around fires and carry larger supply loads to the fire lines or larger water or retardant loads. The Type 1 helicopters are the big ones. Incident commanders who want to make an impact on a fire need to get a handful of those in rotations on the fire lines. They carry massive tanks or buckets, deploying thousands of gallons of water or retardant at a time. The same matching of the right helicopter for the right job goes on throughout the industry. Most of the helicopters we see every day are the smaller ones. We use them for flight training. Private citizens use them for personal enjoyment. They are also used for urban traffic reporting, law enforcement, or power line maintenance. Medium helicopters are used for stability and safety when the weather can be an issue. They are also used for tours. We use mediums for search and rescue, including hoisting operations and for air ambulance services. We also use them for utility purposes and for crop dusting. The big helicopters see a variety of action too. We fly them when we need to lift, carry, or deliver something big, bulky, or heavy. They are used for heavy construction, including transmission towers, mining operations, or delivering HVAC systems onto big buildings. They are also excellent firefighters. Pilots cannot accomplish any of these missions or operations without training. From working through the basic ground school to obtaining a commercial license, helicopter pilots are continually building their experience and their expertise. They go through training for each type of helicopter they fly, and they often go through training for each mission they conduct. As pilots, your students carry a unique responsibility to ensure the safety of others. I want to thank all of you for taking responsibility to create a personal safety culture within your students. This is a process that begins on day 1 of training and never ends. I've mentioned this a couple times, but the helicopter industry is really the key to aviation's future. While we will take rides in autonomous aircraft someday, no one expects to get into any advanced air mobility aircraft model tomorrow without a pilot on board. We've already talked about how helicopters have been operating in the low-altitude urban environment for decades. That makes helicopter pilots the smart choice to fly those flying taxis. Consequently, the need for helicopter instruction is also vital to the future of flight. Civil aviation authorities around the globe require training to UAS operators, providing the much-needed education regarding the fundamentals of moving a drone safely in the sky. We also need flight instruction that helps pilots understand that flying the aircraft involves more than just watching a screen and keeping an eye on battery life. We need instructors who understand the duty to maintain a safe flight, especially while carrying passengers, and who will be actively promoting the culture to their students. We will need that kind of safety culture to build public confidence in the new aircraft that will provide a taxi-like portal-to-portal service. Rotorcraft is a comparatively young industry, and our aircraft continue to evolve. We have already witnessed a massive jump in technology and safety with today's modern helicopters and their glass cockpits and increasing sophistication. Based on what we've seen the past few years at our HAI Heli Expo trade show, the evolution is far from complete. The people who build helicopters today are also creating the rotorcraft of the future. The reason we see these aircraft at our show is because helicopters and our mission-oriented operators are the natural bridge between today's flying and the advanced air mobility of the future. Cayman has built helicopters for years and is now modifying its aircraft for remotely piloted operations. The military conducted field trials for the unmanned CAMX, and that aircraft also successfully completed firefighting operations. Some of our other manufacturers like Sikorsky, Bell, Airbus, and Leonardo have each developed advanced air mobility platforms, including models undergoing the flight testing that will eventually lead to certification. Our helicopter operators are adapting their business models to include unmanned aircraft systems into their fleet. Organizations like Southern California Edison adapted their processes to use drones to conduct a variety of inspections. While they still operate full-size helicopters, they also operate drones in some projects at a much lower cost. Timberland Helicopters in Oregon is also doing the same thing, using drones where it is practical and safe to do so, conducting surveys and inspections. Who is flying these operations? The best answer across the board is helicopter pilots. Helicopter pilots are used to working at low altitudes, and they're used to landing and taking off in confined areas. Let's face it, helicopter pilots don't need runways, and neither will the aircraft of tomorrow. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We still need highly skilled, well-trained pilots who know how to conduct safe flight operations and practice sound aeronautical decision-making. These demands will stay in place until fully autonomous aircraft are tested and certified. Flight instructors will be vital in developing the pilots of tomorrow, and they will likely be instrumental in ensuring that pilots conduct the first wave of advanced air mobility operations with the highest standards of safety. As we add more aircraft to the lower altitudes, the airspace is going to become more congested. And while we understand future aircraft will be quieter than the existing aircraft, it seems likely that they will be noticed by people on the ground. As flight instructors, you probably already are sensitive to noise complaints. HAI's Fly Neighborly program helps train pilots to understand noise complaints and then adjust their operations to mitigate those concerns. This is another example of how flight instructors can help to safely train future pilots to be better neighbors while building confidence in advanced air mobility. Before I wrap up my presentation, I want to make sure I emphasize this one more time. I've mentioned the words safe, safer, and safety nearly 20 times in this presentation. Aviation safety is everyone's responsibility, no matter what kind of aircraft you fly or maintain. Flying safely starts with every flight instructor watching this presentation. Now let me add one final thought for you to consider about the future of rotorcraft aviation. Right now, as we participate in Redbird migration, there is a spacecraft heading towards Mars. Early next year, that spacecraft will land on the Red Planet, and the next Mars rover, named Perseverance, will begin to explore its surroundings. What else did NASA pack aboard the rover? The Mars helicopter. Not an airplane, a helicopter. Doesn't that exemplify the capabilities and potential of the rotorcraft industry? Now you know why I love helicopters, and now I hope you appreciate them too, because I've just shown you all the great things that helicopter pilots can do with their aircraft. I've noted the tremendous demand for pilots capable of vertical flight. I've also explained how helicopter pilots are in the perfect position to direct future flight operations. After this, why wouldn't you choose helicopters for your flight school? Rotorcraft instructors will play an indispensable role as we evolve into the next phase of flight. So come on, choose your mission now, and let's fly into the future together.